I was kind of wondering, I was like, oh, when's the Bilingual Phonetics Club going to start back up? And then he was like, wait, I'm on Nestle. Like, I need to make this happen. Like, we need to make this happen. And so, yeah, I reached out to Dr. Gildersleeve Newman, who was like fantastic and is fantastic. And I'm just really excited to get back to it. And we tweaked it a little bit to go into different languages other than Spanish. So it's multilingual. And we are going to be meeting bi-weekly. So the next meeting is on the 22nd. And every other week we will have a Spanish focus, which I think is cool. But I also think it's really cool that we're going to be focusing on languages other than Spanish too, for the other bi-weekly meetings. But yeah, so thank you so much for being here for Nestle's first winter term event. And Dr. Gildersleeve Newman, if you are ready, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you, Christina. It's super, I want to really thank Christina for reaching out and saying, hey, you want to do that Phonetics Club again? And I had just really been thinking about, yes, Spanish English is very important. And that is an area that I know a lot about, have done dissertation work and worked as a Spanish English bilingual SLP, but I just think it's going to be really fun to explore different languages, as well as explore what that means for us as we understand development, typical development, whatever typical development of speech means, and kind of look at monolinguals versus bilinguals in different languages, and universality versus specificity in learning. Looking at, it's really this is just getting started. Christina and I have some ideas of what we can do. We've got a few things we can do today to get started. And then we're going to have some time where maybe we can break into small groups, or we can talk as a larger group. We'll see what the preference is, but to really think about what should we do next. I don't know. I don't know many of you, and that's part of my excitement and love for being part of this club, because when I came to PSU, all I wanted to do was teach. And all I wanted to do was teach phonetics and bilingual topics, right? That's my background. And I taught undergrad phonetics for a very long time, and post-bac phonetics here, and I've taught it at other institutions. But then, as many of you know, I'm the chair of the department too, and that meant I had to cut way back on what I taught, and there were other people who could, become instructors in this area. So I've just really not, especially in the past couple of years, had the opportunity to work with many undergrads and post-bacs and grad students in this kind of fun, phonetic way. So, yeah. And just to give you a little bit more on my background, I have a PhD focused on speech and phonetics, and my research has been on speech development and disorders in monolingual speakers of English. And also bilingual, looking at typical development of kids, how languages differ in bilinguals from monolinguals. How do you know if it's a speech sound disorder when the child doesn't speak what our tests in our field have assumed is a single way of developing speech. So, kind of exploring that multicultural perspective. I have lived in other countries for many years, many in Germany and then many in Ecuador. And my dissertation was done in Ecuador, looking at well, I'm not going to tell you, actually. I'll tell you about that later. But yeah, so this is, we're just going to start with some things I know about and then see where we go. Okay. what I want to do all of you have a cop? I didn't think about this, Christina. We should have done this, but do you have an IPA chart? How many of you have access to an IPA chart?
I have one actually right here. It's can you see it well? It's like a, like universal IPA chart, that has like a bunch. Awesome. I mean, I can like scan this in like 2 seconds and then drop it and then
chat. Okay.
Yeah, I will do that right now.
Thank you, Christina. Yeah.
No problem.
Okay. Are there questions or anything people want to say as we get started? Okay, well then we're going to just get started. I am going to ask you to shut your eyes for a second, actually. I haven't figured out how to share audio without video. So if you could shut your eyes, thank you. I am going to. Before I do anything else, can you hear that clearly?
Yes, we can hear that.
And I forgot to check if it was coming through the mic, through the sound in Zoom.
I'm not
Actually,
sure.
now I'm going to do it. Yeah. Okay. So I want you to listen to this. Let me shut my door. And just listen to this from a phonetic perspective. What are you hearing? Entonces, ¿qué puma acá? Dani no animal me. Que no tico nada que puma acá. Ni un llamata. Tropante da puma se te llama me que puma ta soft. Okay, why don't you take a minute and just write down some things you think you heard, as far as like consonants, or you could be writing things like, I heard T, K, G, or you could use the IPA type it, which I'm going to be lazy and not do, but I highly encourage you to use the phonemes you hear that you might be familiar with, and then also other sounds that you might not be so familiar with.
Also, I did just drop the file in a PDF form for the International Phonetic Alphabet.
So both of those are in the chat, and I think I'll use the IPA type it. I can do that. But for now, just write down some observations.
Dr. Gildersleeve-Newman, would it be possible for you to like play that clip one more time?
I'm definitely going to. I want to give people.
Okay, no problem.
Keep writing what you're writing, and then we'll do it again.
Yeah, Ashley, I heard that too. Also, entonces.
Okay, let's do it again. Entonces, ¿qué puma acá?
Dani no animal. Ha kay no piko na ta kay pumaka. Mihu Yamata. Tropante da municipio llama mi ki pumaka sokta kanji struktura mihu.
Okay. Before we talk about it, I want to listen to a very different language. So again, shut your eyes because there's gonna be a video for a second. Okay. Oops. Nope. I have to get to where I want to be. They speak a lot slower in here. Yeah. Okay.
Formular im Internet herunterladen.
Nein, das kann ich nicht. Ich kann kein Formular aus dem Internet herunterladen. Wissen Sie, ich habe keinen Computer.
Aber das ist doch gar kein Problem, Herr Walter. Wir füllen das Formular zusammen aus. Ich schreibe alles in den Computer.
Ah, gut, das ist nett.
Einen Moment.
Oh shoot, that was not, I don't know what happened there. Okay, go ahead and write down observations. Okay, I'm hearing now. So you are all using what you know to try and understand it, right? Like, what is I hear some of you have been putting potential consonant and vowel phones in there. Other observation from what's been in the chat.
For Quechua, do you want us to just talk about this one or Quechua as well?
Christina knows this is Quechua.
Did I
hadn't said it yet. It was kind of obvious because a lot of people know.
Yeah, it was in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right, good. All right, so I'm not the one that blew it up. I so apologize, but are we talking about the first one or this one?
Well, there are huge differences between the two. Let's start with Quechua and let's hear some observations.
Okay, something that I heard that I don't believe I saw in the chat was I heard like tomake and yamata. I heard ma. I heard wawa cha.
So are you coming up? So we're going to think about what's the phonemic inventory. What's the phonotactic inventory? Do people feel like, are those terms you want me to talk about a little bit more?
Could you delve a little bit deeper into what a phonotactic inventory is?
That is word and syllable shapes. So English phonotactic rules have really complex clusters. English is predominantly single syllable words. Almost 70% of words are single syllable. We have a lot of different consonants at the end of words. Yeah. So what are some things you observed? Anybody want to give it a try who hasn't commented yet?
I was going to say in the first sample, I heard what I thought was a pretty small vowel inventory. I speak Spanish, so I'm familiar with some Spanish words, and a lot of them sounded like Spanish words, but with a different vowel. Like I heard ki instead of k, and things like that.
Mhm. But there were a lot of words you didn't know too, right?
Lots. I couldn't understand it. I didn't know what was being said. I just picked up words that sounded like words I knew in Spanish.
Yeah, and then Libby in the chat also said, I felt like Quechua has more tonal / prosodic differences.
You want to talk about that, Libby?
I guess it also could have been the way that the father was talking to the son. At least that's what I thought was in the video. And I'm also saying this having been in the Ecuador clinic last term, so we've talked a little bit about Quechua, but I felt like just within each syllable, or like even within separate like phonemes, there was more inflection differences, and like the way he was saying things, I felt like there was more like I don't know, there's more variety in his prosody than in English.
More variety in his prosody?
Maybe that wasn't the right word. I'm just apparently having word finding difficulties.
No.
I think, yeah, I mean, just it stood out because it was very different than English, but then it just seemed that he was using much more inflection and tonal differences when in his speech, and maybe it was because he was trying to teach something to his son, or that's just maybe how Quechua is. I'm not entirely familiar with it, but that was something that stuck out to me, if that made sense.
Let's listen to it one more time, and then we will listen to the German sample. Yes, you are right.
Oye, Charlotte, ¿qué llamantas compañero? ¿Qué llamantas?
Una statement.
¿Qué? Guawacha. Si me no empiezas a que hacen guawacha, entiendo guawacha que se me que tú te llamas racha, toma pistacha, machan del a todo por salir. Ajá, ¿qué te puede? Ya cuánto te puede? ¿Qué? Que capuma. Ajá, puma qué? Ajá, pumacha. Entonces, ¿qué puma acá? Dani no animal. Ah, que no pico nada que puma acá. Mijo.
Anybody try transcribing any of that?
I didn't transcribe. However, it sounded to me like the father was teaching the child translation, like a word. This is a word in Quechua, and this is how you say it in Spanish. That's the gist of the conversation I got.
It's really interesting. Is it Marianne? Or
It's Marian.
Marianne? Marianne, I think that you picked up on something really important, and I'm gonna this is not my Quechua data. I'm having troubles with mine because something in the codex or whatever they call for compressed files. So this is Peruvian Quechua. And it is an English-based researcher having them look at books with pictures like we would do with in a typical setting in the United States. What's this? What's that? What's this? And as you noted, there are a lot of English words in there, or Spanish words being used. Mm-hmm. They aren't the words that you know, the father is saying, yeah, you know, I don't know if Puma is actually the word in Quechua. I mean, I guess it isn't, but they're using Spanish words in this context. Wawacha, yep. So yeah, what else? Any sounds that stood out to you that might be different? Because we're also trying to look for a global understanding of what they're saying.
Could you possibly play it one more time? I felt like there was a sound at the beginning that now I can't pinpoint to like type it, but that
Okay.
was different to me.
That you heard in the second one, like when I just did it with the mother also in there? Let's do it right
No,
here.
I think it was the first one.
Okay, because I went a little further. I'll share my screen. The faces are covered in this one. But you can kind of see the family here.
Entonces, que pomaka dani no animal. Ah, que no pico nada que pomaka mijo llamata. Tropante da principio llama me que pomaka sokta kanji sokta le mijo. Que poma mijos pa ap wawangkul.
Why did you think of that as Portuguese, Louis?
I guess just with like what I know of Portuguese and what I've heard, but I don't think that like Spanish or what I know of like Spanish and stuff has that, how it sounded to me is not common from how I've like learned Spanish, I guess.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nihon. Maybe. So today we're not really transcribing, we're just kind of, gathering some info and comparing. A little bit on Quechua. I call it Quechua because it's a 3-vowel system. There's only 3 phonemes in Quechua, and even the Quechua, which they call it in Peru, the E and the O occur as allophones, right? So when you have a Quechua, it's because of the velar or even uvular K sound, the stop, right? But so there's 3 vowels. You're not hearing very many vowel phonemes. You've transcribed some words with sounds that aren't those 3, and those are allophones, right? Because if you only have 3 vowels, you've got a lot more room to produce allophones, right? Does that make sense?
Mm.
In English, we break up the high front space into E and I to make distinct phonemes. In Spanish, we don't do that, right? It's just E, so you have a lot more range that's acceptable acoustically for E. Does that make questions on that?
So I believe what you're saying, since sorry about that. So it has 3 vowel phonemes, and then that gives more room to produce allophones because there's more, how do I put it? More
Acoustic space. Yeah.
Exactly. There you go. That's the word I was looking for. Yes. And that's why more allophones come from that, because it's, fewer phonemes.
Yep.
Language creativity.
And kind of, what's the word? I mean, we're all lazy when we talk, right? We make as little effort as we make as little articulatory effort as we have to be understood by the listener. So you can be, if you've only got 3 vowels, you don't have to be as precise in those vowels. Did you hear things? So every language has a complex way of communicating its message. Quechua's not doing it with its vowels. Consonants, what'd you hear in consonants? There are similarities, but did you hear differences?
One that stood out to me, it was the zh. I heard that quite a bit.
Elise also in the chat mentioned that she heard, I can never pronounce this sound. It's like the kind of upside down Y symbol. I don't know how to just talk about that. Oh, I have this in front of me. So maybe I could actually use this to talk about it. What is that sound called? You see it in Spanish sometimes.
It's basically what Ashley just captured.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
It's more
Ashley and Elise.
Yeah, there's different subtleties of that. And Quechua has retroflex sounds, so it's a lot more like a than a right? But there are a lot more palatal sounds in Quechua, right? And the R in the Quechua I know is more like that symbol, like aji, which they don't contort their face when they do that. Aji is yes, right? And that's the R sound in Quechua.
I'm wondering, I heard what it sounded to me kind of like a ch sound. That's like,
You have lots of ch sounds.
Okay.
Mhm.
Cool.
I heard lots of stops, and some of the stops sounded more, for lack of a better word, stronger than they do in Spanish. Maybe some aspiration or something, with lots of stops.
Good to hear. They have adjectives.
Adjectives.
Yep, there are adjectives in there. So there aren't actually more stops by place, and there's no contrast in voiced and voiceless consonants, 0. You could call, and again, I'm referring to the Quechua I know better from Highland, Ecuador, but the contrast between taita, which is father, and daida is allophonic. They're both father, right? So that the Quechua as a language is not contrasting voicing for meaning.
There was a lot of affricates and affricates.
And
I heard a
fricative.
lot of
Yep.
fricates, yeah.
Yep, both of them. Yeah, there's lots and lots of chas. Yep.
Especially at the beginning when he's not speaking in Spanish.
Say that again.
Especially at the beginning when he doesn't speak Spanish.
Yeah.
The Portuguese bit is a lot of fricates and affricates.
Well, and I think, yeah, so I think, Libby, when you were talking about it sounding Portuguese, some of those sounds are in Portuguese, the more type. And a big piece of my research for my dissertation was looking at babbling in first words, so younger than the child in here, but looking what sounds do kids start with when they first learn to speak. Are they making all those sounds of Quechua? Or are they going to be similar to a kid babbling in English, right? Or any language. And from a large transcription and comparison that I did, there's a lot more dorsal sounds in Quechua. Anybody remember what dorsal means?
Is it like a back of your tongue?
Yeah, back of
the K's and the G's and back of tongue, or palatal can be included in dorsal. So English doesn't have nearly as many, right? how many of you have taken speech sound disorders
I have.
or speech
Cool.
development?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have two.
We kind of think of K and G as being later than T's and D's and B's and P's, right? Because, and why might that be that kids are thought to get bilabials and coronal sounds earlier?
Wouldn't that be because it's got a visual component? Like you can see the person that you're learning from, and it is, I don't know. I feel like that also it's an ease of articulation, like it's at the front of the mouth, at your tip of your tongue. So, and it's already there. The tip of your tongue is already near the front and your lips are already in the front. So it's like easier. Am I just like making this up?
Or perhaps developmentally too, the strength of the muscles of the lips are stronger than the ones in the tongue and placing it in the back from sucking and, you know, from nursing and stuff like that.
And then,
Yeah, sorry.
oh no, I know, I'm so sorry, Marianne. No, go on.
Just from the physiological development, I think it's earlier to develop those muscles in the front, so it's easier to articulate the sound.
By the way, we're not going to talk about German today. Let's just do it. This is really good. You know, it's too much to do both.
Totally.
Dr. Gian, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on ejectives more? I just don't think I'd actually heard that term before, even though I'm like looking at my IPA chart right now.
And they're on there, right? You see that?
I don't, unless I'm just not.
They are on there. So if you look under did you get the PDF that I sent?
Yep.
All right, cool. So there you go. Tony's showing it right now. If you look right under the chart, there's like consonants, non-pulmonic, and then you'll see like a little chart, and there's clicks, voiced implosives, and then ejectives.
Oh, yep. Okay. There we go. I see. I was looking for like a different kind of. I got it now. So like,
there's a lot of info.
Yeah, no, and I have one written on my I have one taped to my wall, and I just didn't put that on there. But like anatomically, Dr. Gian, when you yeah, there, I see it now. When you were giving an example, was there like air coming out of both sides of your tongue? Like I felt like it was kind of almost like a lateralized sound, or can you explain that more?
So there are a lot of ways to make stop consonants, right? We think of, because English does voiced and voiceless, that, you know, oh, okay, you know, that's one way to do it, but it's not the only way at all to contrast the airflow when you make a full obstruction in the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole little section right here, it is added on to voiced and voiceless stops to include ways of manipulating the airstream.
Okay.
And for an ejectives are always voiceless, and basically you're using, I mean, this is how we do it physiologically. You are manipulating your larynx, and you're lifting your larynx and holding the obstruction wherever you were articulating that sound. And by, you know, kind of pressing your larynx up, you're making that air that's captured in between it with a T ejective in between the tongue at the tip of your the front of your mouth and your larynx. You're making that really, really high pressure, so that when you let your tongue go, it makes a popping sound basically when you release. So that was really, I struggled there. But it would be so that the air coming out is popping, like, because you've made it so pressed together. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
And they can only be voiceless because you cannot vibrate your vocal folds and compress air above them.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That makes sense.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, so those are some things. There was something else I was going to say. Oh, okay, so that's right. We were talking about what sounds children make. So again, we all kind of grew up in our field of linguistics thinking of certain sounds coming first. And what I want you to be very cautious about is thinking about where we got the information that we base our understanding of development on.
So, in English, right, like we view k and g as later developing sounds, but we also don't have a lot of velar sounds either, right? It's really just k and g that I can think of in English.
Angma, but yeah. There is a real strong bias in everything we learn to an English-centric framework, right? So everything we're thinking about, we have to test, and we want to come from theoretical framework that says we think a certain thing is happening for X reason. That was actually what my dissertation was are Quechua infants going to sound like English learning infants for articulatory reasons, or developmental reasons? Are they going to sound more like Quechua adults, right? To just understand that. Because there's so many dorsal sounds, because there's different vowels or more limited vowels. And the other big thing that's hard to capture in running speech in a language you don't know is that their words are extremely long. So you're hearing multiple CV syllables that are a single word, and you're not hearing clusters, right? And then, go ahead.
Is that because it's a language that like builds within it? So you have like a core piece of word, an idea that you're trying to convey, and then to like adjust it the way that like morphemes, but it's just like you add more and more in there, and then it's the same word. So it's like you can say like a more complex meaning, and I'm trying to find, morphologically influenced, but like I'm trying to find an example of this. So I know that there are some indigenous languages too, like Native American languages that do
Many
this.
languages in the world.
Yeah, Japanese does it as well.
It's a agglutinative is what the linguistic term is.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, Quechua is a language like that. There are, so you heard a lot of chas at the end of the words. That is basically pointing out that it's the noun. So wawacha, well, wawa is baby or small child, wawacha. There's the wawa, and there many of the question words add on, you indicate where by adding a ta at the end of something. So it tells you it's a location, etc. So yes, that's part of it. Yep. Other thoughts, questions?
Yeah. Can you further explain what exactly is, did you say agglutinative?
Agglutinative, yeah.
Oh, oops, my bad.
So an agglutinative language has a word has the prepositions, the articles, the question built into a word. You keep adding on to a word to indicate place, to indicate that you're asking about it, to indicate plural. You add that's one way we agglutinate in English, is to add an S to words, right? But that's still a noun, it's just a plural. In Quechua, you'd add verbs to certain nouns, or your verb would take on adjectives and adverbs. So there's a lot of, in very few words, you've added a lot of information to tell what you're emphasizing, what you're asking about. Does that make sense? Yeah. I'll give you a quick summary of my dissertation, and then let's talk about what we want to do going forward. So we were looking at English and Quechua, trying to understand what influences an infant, what's driving development. And we were coming from a theoretical framework was articulatory ease, right? So that it's called the frame content theory, which was that basically, as Marianne said, that it comes out of the development of the body, right? That speech is along for the ride, but we've developed a lot of physiological functions to survive. And the infant's doing a lot of jaw open, jaw closed, right? For swallowing, for chewing, not for swallowing, for sucking, and for chewing. And that this is a universal feature, that there are areas in the brain you can stimulate. There've been like some studies in individuals with seizures. They've looked at primates, and there are places in the brain you can innervate, and you will get this flapping of the jaw, ba 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 ba, da 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 da, ga 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 ga. And so the theory was that children will have, when you make a duh, you'll have a front vowel with it in early babbling, because it does at the front of the mouth, and so the vowels will be at the front. What will differ is whether it's a high or a low vowel, because all you have to do is just make the sound and just have your mouth more open or closed. So da 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 da. So all you're doing is just you're not having to move the tongue, right? That's kind of the theory I was exploring. And we found Quechua infants to be very similar to English learning infants, and not like their adult counterparts. I did have some surprising findings, which were something I'll talk about later, but there were environmental effects that resulted in some complicated sounds. Okay, I'll spend 1 minute. Some like 14-month-olds following all my expectations for articulatory influences on early development, but I'd be recording, I'd be in the community recording, and there would be examples of children going, ah, ah, and, I'm just sitting there thinking, my dissertation advisor is going to kill me. They shouldn't be making those sounds. That's the wrong. But the longer I was there, the more I realized that those were functional. I'm going to show you some pictures of where I was at. I think it's in here, yeah. And these are I was in the highlands of Ecuador, where they were monolingual speakers of Quechua. And this is me doing hearing testing, but I'll show you, this is where they live, right? And so when you're that little, it's very important that you're able to tell animals to get away from you, because if you look at I don't know if I have, you can't really see. Well, this is the classroom, but the homes.
We're actually not seeing any
Oh,
photos.
you're not?
Yeah, we're seeing the file opener that has the photos like in a smaller way.
Okay, let me do it again. Sorry.
No worries. Just wanted to let you know.
Okay, this is one of the homes where the families would live, and they don't have doors. So we have lots of llamas, lots of dogs, and and the need to be able to go get out of here is very high as soon as you're starting to move around. And that is, aha, that is what the parents would use. It took me about 6 months to figure that out. But so it was an example of very, that wasn't speech, right? But it was a more complex articulation needed to tell those big animals, get out, leave me alone, that developed very early. So, but that's what I'm gonna stop with there. So that was a little on Quechua. Again, this is just our first time, and I feel like I talked a lot. But what we'd like to do for the last 10 minutes is talk about what we can do as a group every 2 weeks that would be of interest. Some ideas are looking at development, thinking about how different languages affect the kind of our interpretation of how children are learning in our own environments, in English environments, as well as in other cultures, having people bring different languages and talk about them. I'd be happy to work with people in preparing. So what are some ideas?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a native speaker of a different language, I think that would be really fun if they felt comfortable with doing so. I did talk to someone who's here today about the possibility of doing that, and they seemed interested, but I will let them let you know if they would like to pursue that. But I think that's a really cool idea. Moving forward to get like my classmates, firsthand perspective, and cool opportunity to work with you too.
And remember, we are just getting started. This is your club, and we can do lots of different things. If you don't feel comfortable now, you can feel comfortable later.
Exactly, no pressure.
I'm just curious from clinical perspective, there are a lot of languages spoken in schools, for example. How would a clinician who does not know the language, a person could be bilingual, but like Swahili is unfamiliar. How would you approach that? Like, that's my interest.
Yeah, we could definitely talk about that. I can talk about that all day. I teach on that topic, bilingual topic.
Yeah.
I am an expert in speech. I wouldn't consider myself an expert in language. So we will have much more of a speech focus and a phonetics focus.
Diagnosing if you are unfamiliar with a language. I guess that's the difficulty I was curious about.
We could spend many sessions on that. We'll do that. We could bring that in.
I think it would even be helpful to expand on IPA. So other IPA symbols that aren't typically, used in English and used more so in other languages. Because personally, I think that would be super helpful when you're listening to these different languages. And sometimes I hear a sound that obviously isn't very familiar, but I think, oh, how do I transcribe that? Yeah. Do I even know the symbol? So I think that would also be super helpful.
I think that's great. And I think, we didn't get too much into what sounds you were hearing versus what people were making, but there was a tendency to hear English sounds in what's heard. And so that being able to listen to other languages and become familiar with different sounds as well as hear them in English would be a lot of fun. And I love that Bhavani, that sounds great. And we could go through the sounds on the international chart, absolutely.
Thank you. I'd love to participate more once I learn more about phonetics and get more used to IPA.
Sounds fantastic.
I would like to explore more the similarities of Japanese and Spanish and their syllable structure and their vowels and the way that things are expressed, because as I've I grew up speaking Spanish and English, but then I took Japanese in community college, and I was amazed by the similarities between the vowels and the way that the syllable structures worked out. And it was just interesting to me that there can be so many similarities in languages that seem so different. Yeah, that's my own little geeking moment.
That's great.
I think that sounds really cool too. I put in the chat, but I'm going to say it anyway. I also used to study Japanese back in the day. I'm now a Spanish minor, and I love Spanish, and I still love Japanese, and I miss it. But yeah, so I think that would be really cool. I'm also into anime and video games and stuff. So, there's that too.
In Adyen, is it Adyenis?
Adyenis.
Adyenis?
Yes.
We're, I think you came in a little later. We're going to have every other meeting will be focused on Spanish itself. So, feel free to come to those too. All this sounds great. I think I probably will, I would love to spend a little time talking about theoretical frameworks, because there's a little bit that, the fact that Spanish and Japanese have similarities, we also want to look at their differences. And the theory that I grew up on, friend content theory, actually goes back and talks about what's considered the first spoken system, phonetic system, and why it was like that. And those similarities, are seen across languages that have absolutely nothing to do with each other. Most languages have a lot of similarities, and there's sounds that occur in almost all languages that would be good to think about why. And yeah.
So we're just pattern seeking humans looking for similarities.
Ease of articulation and perceptual distinction. We're lazy. We want to get the most bang for the buck in what sounds we make, and how easy they are for other people to understand them, right? We're not lazy, but we don't waste our resources if we can.
We're frugal.
Resourceful.
Efficient, yeah.
There's also a lot of paralinguistics too.
What? Say that again.
There's a lot of paralinguistics that
we could cover too.
Associated with speech.
Yep.
Help understand what the meanings are.
Yeah. I am going to have to exit. I have to go to another meeting. Christina, let me know. We'll see if we can come up with what to do in 2 weeks, in 4 weeks actually, and then.
Wait, I thought. Oh yeah, for the multilingual.
For the general, yeah.
Yes, totally.